Hello folks, Mr. Genet here, to discuss something very important with you, a topic that I know you've been putting off for quite a while. I'm speaking, of course, about your future career choice. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why do I have to worry about this? After all, I'm years away from finishing school. In fact, I might never need a job. I could win the lottery or marry rich. And yes, of course, most people do those things, but it's always good to have a backup option. And that's where I'm here to help. I'm here to tell you about a career that might just be for you. Yes, I'm speaking, of course, about the life of a mascot. Now, I've had a couple experiences with mascots. The first one was when I was 17 years old, working at a summer camp with the city of Calgary. We had just finished a morning full of activities and had been told there would be a special guest coming. And the kids were delighted when they discovered that the special guest was none other than Harvey the Hound, the Calgary Flames' very own lovable, mischievous mascot. Now, Harvey the Hound is very inspirational because even though he can't speak, he's made a very good career for himself. A really inspirational story when you come to think of it. Now, Harvey the Hound did have a handler with him who helped to communicate, and this handler asked the campers to give a rousing cheer of "Go Flames Go." Now, I would have none of this, for you see, my team is the Montreal Canadiens, and I would not betray them just to please this flea-ridden beast. So quickly, I made an improvised Montreal Canadiens sign and started to cheer "Go Habs Go." Now, you may not know this about dogs, but they have an impeccable sense of hearing. So Harvey the Hound quickly picked up on this and pointed out to me, gestured for me to approach. I thought he just wanted a friendly discussion, but instead he grabbed me, hurled me out of the gate of the compound. I scraped my wrist on the way out, and then Harvey shut the door. The children laughed at me. I was embarrassed. I was an exile in my own place of employment. It was not easy, least of all the tetanus that I got from the gate. In any case, though, Harvey must have had a change of heart. He opened the gate, invited me back in, and gave me a hug. So all was forgiven. The tetanus took a little bit longer, but that eventually cleared up. So Harvey the Hound, to be someone like him, you need amazing strength of personality to overcome the lack of speech, to be incredibly powerful, to hurl someone like me, who's basically 95% muscle. He must have been training for years in the mountains under the supervision of one of the world's top senseis in order to achieve such a feat. My second experience with a mascot was actually from inside the mascot. I haven't told many people this, but I was the very first Cody the Kodiak, the mascot of St. Martin de Porres High School, back in 2016. It was very special. We didn't have a school mascot, and some of my fellow staff approached me and asked me, "Would you like to be the first Cody the Kodiak?" Of course, I said yes. How many times do you get to be a mascot in your life? How many people get to do that? It was going to be incredible. I started to think about what kind of mascot I wanted to be. My biggest inspiration as a mascot was actually the mascot from the Edmonton Elks, then known as the Edmonton Eskimos. That was a football. They actually have a few different mascots, but one of them is a football, and it basically is an extremely hostile, always angry football that hurls itself to the ground, sometimes attacks other mascots. It's really quite great. It's very antisocial. I thought it was very relatable. I was determined that my version of Cody the Kodiak would be every bit as hostile and belligerent to those around it as this football. The day came to put on the costume. I hadn't actually seen what it looked like until just a few days before. The athletic director had actually tried it on. And so I put it on. I was wearing just light clothes underneath. I told my classes that I had to leave a little early for a dentist appointment. And I was going to be so disappointed to miss our spring sports rally because I didn't want anyone to know that I was Cody the Kodiak. Kind of like Batman doesn't want anyone to know because he's got lots of enemies, right? Like a mascot has lots of enemies, so it wouldn't be safe if they knew I was Cody. So I put on the mascot a costume. It had several parts to it. I had to put on the legs, the body and the legs and the body and head were two separate components. And the jersey, there was a school jersey. It was not part of the mascot uniform. So that had to be basically stretched on over top. It was not easy to get that on. So finally, I had the mascot costume on, and I had to wait in the school at the edge of the door for quite a while because it was actually an outdoor pep rally. So the plan was that I was going to come out onto the field as the boys' soccer team was playing an exhibition game basically against itself, like a split squad game. I was given careful instructions not to speak, to maintain that code of silence, as well as to avoid walking or running over muddy areas on the field, because otherwise the costume would be ruined. As I was waiting, people were passing by, some of these different athletes, and they were variously like whacking me and stuff like that because they just thought I was a large bear that was incapable of pain. And if they were thinking of emotional pain, that was correct because my emotions had been numbed long ago, but physical pain was still definitely a reality. Finally, it was time for them to announce the surprise arrival of the new mascot, and they announced Cody the Kodiak. Lumbering in my mascot attire, I ran onto the field. Some other teacher yelled at me to change my direction because I was going over some mud, and I made my way to the soccer game where the boys were playing. They were so engrossed in their game and trying to be impressive that they didn't see this giant belligerent bear running toward them. So I ran right to the middle of the field and I kicked the ball away from them. It was great. It ruined their game. They didn't seem to think it was that entertaining though. And some of these boys on the soccer team, they actually were jostling me, shouldering me, shoving me. And despite the big furry mascot, it actually was quite uncomfortable, quite painful getting elbowed and shoved, but it was okay. So anyway, I couldn't run as fast as these soccer players wearing this big heavy mascot costume. And so I kind of lumbered along, following the play, waiting for my opportunity to strike again. And it came when the ball was loose in front of one of the side's nets. And so I managed to grab it, scoop it up. I picked up the ball in my hands, which you're not supposed to do in soccer unless you're the goalkeeper. And I ran it right into the net. Touchdown. And I slammed the ball right on the ground and started to dance and showboat like they do in football. It was glorious. I think the soccer players, I think at that point it was when the goalie shoved me, but it was okay. I mean, I was a winner. I got a touchdown. Pain was just temporary. So at that point, I made my way to the sideline to mingle with the crowds. Everything was going great. They seemed to enjoy all of how I ruined the whole game. It was really wonderful. They were posing, they wanted photos, they wanted hugs, they wanted high fives with the big friendly bear, Cody the Kodiak. Everything was great, right? Wrong. Suddenly, I felt a burning pain in my eyes. There must have been some kind of dust or dander inside the costume, and I wear contacts especially, so it was very painful. I could feel the tears running down my face, and as you might know, when tears start to flow, the nose quickly follows. But there was nothing I could do to either relieve my eyes or wipe my nose, because if I tried to touch my head, well, it was covered in the bear head. There was no way I could reach my actual face. So I was going through a lot of pain, but I thought, no, I can't ruin the debut of Cody the Kodiak by getting in fetal position and writhing in pain on the mud. That would not look good in the yearbook. So I just did my best to try to maintain a pose like everything's happy and waving and high-fiving. Finally, the sports rally was coming to an end, and the students started to head inside. I had now had my chance to go to the office and get out of that costume and try to give my face some relief. But it took a long time to get that costume off. We had to get the jersey off first, which seemed to take forever. And then finally the head. So the head, the top part, it had two straps. So they strapped under your arms for stability, so it doesn't just pop off. And then the legs as well. So by this time, as you can imagine, my face was just a mess. It was disgusting inside that mascot costume. It was extremely painful, and my eyes were just bloodshot. I think I'd managed to cry out a little bit of the dander by the end, but it was still really uncomfortable. They asked me at the school if I would do it again for the awards ceremony, but I said no. I've checked that off my bucket list. No more mascottery for me. But they had no problem finding a student with lots of school spirit who would fill in and be the next Cody the Kodiak. And sure enough, we saw Cody the Kodiak run in during the awards ceremony, high-fiving everyone. Everyone loved to see Cody the Kodiak. It seemed like this was a kinder, gentler Cody the Kodiak. But soon after giving all these high fives, I saw Cody the Kodiak gripping his bare head in agony. For I believe that that same Cody had the same issue with the dust, just that his eye had had, and that it got into his or her eyes as well. Because Cody the Kodiak quickly made an exit and ran out of the gym. So, being a mascot is wonderful. You can do horrible antisocial things with no one knowing who you are. Maintain your anonymity. But the price to pay is extreme physical pain. Unless, of course, maybe they vacuumed the inside first. Maybe it all could have been avoided. Oh, yes, the things we learn. So, I hope this has given you food for thought to see whether or not you want to be a mascot. Of course, unfortunately, I have no evidence that I really was Cody the Kodiak, so don't be expecting any. It's not like I'm going to have a photo at the end of this video. Okay, bye-bye. Oh no, how did that get there? So careless of me.